The billionaire let his son choose his future wife. The boy chose a waitress. The strangest part wasn't that the boy chose a waitress. It was what he said next. The laughter came first. Warm, polite, predictable. It rolled across the grand ballroom of the Montgomery Foundation like a gentle wave, bouncing beneath crystal chandeliers and reflecting off walls lined with gold-trimmed mirrors. More than 300 guests filled the room that evening. CEOs, politicians, investors, families whose names appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. Everyone had gathered to celebrate the 8th birthday of Noah Montgomery, the only son of billionaire Ethan Montgomery. Ethan stood near the center of the room, one hand resting on his son's shoulder. At 42, he had built one of the largest real estate empires in America. People listened when he spoke. People moved when he entered a room. But tonight, he wasn't acting like a billionaire. Tonight, he was simply a father trying to make his son smile. "All right, buddy," Ethan said, kneeling slightly. "Since it's your birthday, you get one impossible wish." Noah's blue eyes sparkled. "Anything. Almost anything." More laughter followed. Phones lifted. Guests smiled. The moment felt light, harmless. Then Ethan grinned and pointed toward the crowd. "Tell me, Noah, out of everyone here, who would you choose as your future wife?" The room erupted. Some guests chuckled. A few women jokingly raised their hands. Noah didn't laugh. He looked around carefully, slowly, as if he were searching for someone very specific. Ethan expected him to point at a princess-themed entertainer, maybe one of the daughters of family friends. Instead, Noah's eyes stopped near the back of the ballroom, near the service entrance, near a woman carrying a silver tray filled with sparkling water. Her. The laughter faded. The boy's small finger remained perfectly still, pointing directly at the waitress. The woman froze. Ethan turned. So did everyone else. She looked to be around 28. Blonde hair neatly tied back. Simple black uniform. No jewelry except a delicate silver chain hidden beneath her collar. Her name tag read, Claire Bennett. For a moment, nobody spoke. Claire glanced behind her, convinced the child must be pointing at someone else. But there was nobody there. "Me?" she asked softly. Noah nodded. "Yes." Another awkward silence settled across the room. Ethan forced a smile. "Well, that's unexpected." Several guests laughed nervously. Claire lowered her eyes and continued holding the tray, clearly hoping the moment would pass. Then Noah said something that made every sound in the ballroom disappear. "I picked her because Mom told me to." Ethan stopped breathing. The smile vanished from his face. Across the room, glasses froze halfway to lips. Conversations died instantly. Noah's mother had been gone for 5 years. Claire's fingers tightened around the tray. Ethan stared at his son. "What did you say?" The boy looked confused by the sudden tension. "Mom told me to find her." His voice was calm, certain, as if he were explaining something obvious. "She told me in my dream." Somewhere outside, rain tapped softly against the tall ballroom windows. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. And for the first time that evening, Claire Bennett felt every eye in the room turn toward her. For several long seconds, nobody in the ballroom seemed to remember how to speak. The rain continued tapping softly against the windows overlooking Central Park. Crystal chandeliers glowed above hundreds of frozen faces. Ethan Montgomery slowly looked from his son to Claire Bennett and back again. Noah sat calmly beside him, completely unaware of the shock he had just created. To the 8-year-old boy, there was nothing strange about what he had said. "Noah," Ethan said carefully, lowering his voice, "your mother told you that in a dream?" The boy nodded immediately. 3 times. A murmur spread through the room. Claire felt her cheeks grow warm. She wanted to disappear. She was a waitress working an evening shift. She had never met the Montgomery family. She certainly did not belong at the center of attention in a ballroom filled with some of the most powerful people in New York. "Sir," she said softly, taking a small step back, "I think there must be some misunderstanding." Ethan barely heard her. His attention remained fixed on his son. 5 years. It had been 5 years since Olivia Montgomery passed away. 5 years since Noah had lost his mother. Children processed grief in unusual ways. Therapists had explained that many times. Dreams, imaginary conversations, comforting memories. Ethan understood all of that. But something about Noah's expression unsettled him. The boy was not imagining. He was certain. "What exactly did Mom say?" Ethan asked. Noah looked toward Claire again. She said not to worry because the lady with the silver necklace would come one day. Claire froze. Instinctively, her hand moved toward her collar. Hidden beneath the fabric of her uniform rested a delicate silver necklace she almost never showed anyone. Ethan noticed the movement immediately. So did several guests standing nearby. The room seemed to grow quieter. Claire swallowed hard. How does he know about my necklace? She whispered. Noah answered before anyone else could. Because Mom showed me. A chill traveled through Ethan's chest. The necklace was still hidden. Noah should not have been able to see it from where he stood. Claire slowly pulled the chain into view. A small silver pendant rested at the end. Simple, worn with age. Nothing extraordinary. Yet Noah stared at it as though he had recognized an old friend. That is the one, he said. Claire's fingers tightened around the pendant. Suddenly, memories she had not visited in years stirred somewhere deep inside her mind. Hospital hallways. Quiet conversations. Late nights. A woman with kind eyes. She quickly pushed the thoughts away. It was impossible. Across the ballroom, guests exchanged uneasy glances. The birthday celebration had transformed into something nobody could explain. Ethan finally rose to his feet. His expression remained composed, but his eyes revealed something else. Curiosity, confusion, and perhaps the smallest trace of hope. Claire, he said gently, would you mind speaking with me for a few minutes after your shift? Claire hesitated. Every instinct told her to say no. Yet when she looked at Noah, she saw only sincerity. No manipulation. No game. Just a little boy who seemed absolutely convinced that a promise had somehow crossed the distance between yesterday and today. Outside, the rain continued falling over Manhattan. Inside, a story that should never have existed had just begun. The celebration ended nearly an hour later, but the strange tension never truly left the room. Guests continued smiling, raising glasses, and congratulating Noah, yet conversations kept circling back to the same question. Who was Claire Bennett, and why had an 8-year-old boy spoken about her, as if she were part of a promise made years ago? Claire spent the remainder of her shift trying to focus on work. She refilled water glasses, cleared plates, offered polite smiles, but her thoughts kept returning to Noah's words. The lady with the silver necklace. The phrase echoed inside her mind. By 10 o'clock, the ballroom had emptied. The music was gone. The chandeliers seemed softer now. Outside, Manhattan glistened beneath fresh rain. Claire stood near the employee entrance, pulling on a light coat when she heard footsteps approaching. Ethan Montgomery. Without the crowd around him, he looked different. Less like a billionaire. More like a tired father carrying something heavy. Noah walked beside him, holding a small umbrella. The boy smiled the moment he saw Claire. I knew you would still be here, he said. Claire managed a nervous smile. Looks like you were right. Ethan slipped his hands into his coat pockets. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then he exhaled slowly. Thank you for agreeing to stay a few minutes. Claire nodded. I'm still not sure why I agreed. A faint smile touched Ethan's face before disappearing. Honestly, neither am I. Noah stepped closer. Can I ask her? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. One question. Noah looked directly at Claire. Did you know my mom? Claire immediately shook her head. No, the answer came too quickly. Too automatically. Noah seemed confused. Ethan noticed it too. You answered that very fast, he said quietly. Claire lowered her eyes. Because I never met Olivia Montgomery personally. Ethan's expression changed. Personally, the single word hung in the cool night air. Claire realized her mistake immediately. She looked away toward the street where headlights reflected off wet pavement. Years ago, while I was in nursing school, I volunteered at St. Catherine Medical Center. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Olivia had spent her final months there. Claire continued carefully. I worked overnight shifts helping patients who did not have family nearby. Noah squeezed the handle of his umbrella tighter. Ethan stared at her without blinking. And my wife was there. Claire nodded once. Yes. Silence followed. Not an uncomfortable silence. The kind that appears when pieces of a puzzle begin sliding together on their own. Ethan had visited that hospital countless times. He remembered doctors, specialists, nurses, hallways, machines. But he did not remember Claire. I do not understand, he admitted softly. If you knew Olivia, why have I never seen you before? Claire looked down at the silver pendant resting against her collarbone. Her fingers gently touched it. A shadow of an old memory crossed her face. Because your wife and I mostly talked after you, and Noah went home for the night. Noah's eyes widened. Ethan felt something shift inside him. For the first time since the conversation began, he was no longer curious about a dream. He was curious about the woman standing in front of him. And somehow, deep inside, he felt that the real story had not even started yet. Claire did not sleep much that night. Long after she returned to her small apartment in Queens, Noah's words continued echoing in her mind. The lady with the silver necklace. The sentence felt impossible. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she remembered Olivia Montgomery's face. The next morning arrived beneath a pale gray sky. Claire reported to work at 7 o'clock sharp. She hoped the previous evening would fade into memory. Instead, she found a small envelope waiting in her employee locker. Inside was a handwritten note. It contained only one sentence. Noah would like to thank you for talking with us. Would you join us for breakfast this Saturday? Beneath the message was Ethan Montgomery's phone number. Claire stared at the note for several seconds. Then she folded it carefully and slipped it into her purse. 3 days later, she found herself standing outside a quiet cafe overlooking the Hudson River. She almost turned around twice before entering. Through the window, she immediately spotted Noah. The boy waved excitedly the moment he saw her. Ethan rose from the table. Unlike the formal black suit he had worn at the birthday gala, today he looked almost ordinary in a navy sweater and dark jeans. Almost. Thank you for coming, he said. Claire nodded. I am still not sure why I said yes. Noah grinned. Because Mom told you to. Ethan closed his eyes briefly while Claire laughed despite herself. It was the first genuine laugh she had shared with either of them. Breakfast began awkwardly. Noah talked enough for all three of them. He described school projects, baseball cards, and a science competition he hoped to win. Claire listened patiently. Ethan mostly watched. More than once he noticed how naturally she encouraged the boy. She never talked down to him, never pretended interest. She simply listened. It reminded him of someone. Halfway through breakfast, Noah excused himself to look at the bakery display near the counter. For the first time, Ethan and Claire sat alone. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just careful. Tell me about Olivia, Claire said softly. Ethan looked surprised. Most people avoided mentioning his wife. What would you like to know? Claire stared out the window. What made her happiest? The question caught him off guard. Not because it was difficult, because nobody had asked it in years. A faint smile appeared on his face. Rainy mornings, he answered. Books. Terrible coffee. Watching Noah fall asleep on the couch. Claire smiled. That sounds like her. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. You really did know her. Claire nodded. More than I realized at the time. Before Ethan could respond, Noah returned carrying a napkin. I found it again, he announced proudly. Claire looked down. The boy had drawn a picture. 3 stick figures stood beneath a large tree. One was labeled Noah. One was labeled Dad. The third figure wore a small necklace. Claire felt her breath catch. I drew this after the dream, Noah explained. Ethan took the napkin from his son and examined it carefully. Then his expression changed. Near the corner of the drawing, almost hidden among the crayon lines, was a detail neither adult had expected to see. A tiny silver pendant shaped exactly like the one resting around Claire's neck. The table fell silent. Ethan looked from the drawing to the necklace around Claire's neck and then back again. Noah sipped his orange juice as if nothing unusual had happened. To him, the picture was simply a picture. To the adults, it was becoming something far more difficult to explain. Claire carefully touched the pendant resting against her chest. It was a small silver locket, worn smooth by years of use. Did your mother ever see this necklace? Ethan asked quietly. Claire hesitated. The question opened a door she had kept closed for years. Yes, she finally admitted. Many times. Noah immediately leaned forward. I knew it. Ethan ignored the comment. His attention remained fixed on Claire. Tell me about it. Claire lowered her eyes toward the drawing. Outside the cafe window, clouds drifted slowly across the Hudson River. The morning light reflected against the water in soft silver waves. The necklace was a gift, she said. I received it during my final semester of nursing school. Ethan waited. Claire took a slow breath. One evening, I was sitting with a patient who could not sleep. She was worried about her family, worried about leaving them behind. We talked for hours. Noah listened carefully. Even the noise of the cafe seemed to fade. Before I left that night, she handed me this locket. Claire gently held the pendant between her fingers. I tried to refuse. She insisted. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. What did she say? Claire looked toward the river. For a moment, her voice became almost a whisper. She said that kindness should never travel alone. Ethan stared at her. The phrase hit him like an old song he had not heard in years. Olivia used to say those exact words. Not occasionally. Constantly. It was one of her favorite expressions. Claire noticed the change in his face immediately. You recognize it? Ethan nodded slowly. My wife said that all the time. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Noah's eyes moved back and forth between the two adults. See, he said proudly. Mom knew. Ethan rubbed a hand across his jaw. Logic told him there had to be an explanation. Coincidences existed. Memories overlapped. People repeated familiar phrases. Yet the coincidences were beginning to pile on top of each other. The necklace, the drawing, the dream, the hospital, the phrase. Too many pieces were starting to connect. Claire suddenly remembered something. Her expression shifted. Wait. Ethan looked up. What is it? She opened the locket for the first time in years. Inside was a tiny folded piece of paper. The edges had yellowed with age. Claire had never unfolded it. She had always felt strange doing so, as though the note belonged to someone else. I completely forgot this was inside, she said. Ethan leaned closer. Noah climbed onto his chair to see better. With careful fingers, Claire unfolded the paper. The handwriting was delicate, elegant, familiar. Ethan recognized it instantly. His heart stopped. It was Olivia's handwriting. And at the very top of the note, written in blue ink faded by time, were 6 words that changed everything. If you are reading this someday. The world seemed to narrow to the small piece of paper resting between Claire's fingers. Nobody spoke. The sounds of the cafe faded into the background. Even Noah remained unusually still. Ethan stared at the handwriting as if he were looking at a ghost. He had seen those elegant letters thousands of times. Birthday cards, grocery lists, notes left on the kitchen counter. There was no doubt. Olivia had written this. Claire swallowed carefully and continued reading. If you are reading this someday, it means life surprised both of us. Her voice trembled slightly. Ethan lowered his eyes. Noah leaned closer. The note was short, much shorter than anyone expected. To the person holding this necklace, thank you for sitting beside me when the nights felt long. Thank you for treating me like a person instead of a patient. If kindness brought this necklace to you, then please keep it. One day my son may need people like you more than he needs people like me. Claire stopped reading. Her vision blurred for a moment. Ethan stared at the table. His hands had become completely still. Noah looked confused. That sounds like Mom. Ethan laughed softly. A sad laugh. A real one. Yes, he whispered. It really does. Claire carefully turned the note over. She expected the message to end there. Instead, more writing appeared on the back. Smaller, as if it had been added later. Her heart began beating faster. There is more, she said quietly. Ethan looked up immediately. Claire read the final lines aloud. And if you ever meet my family, tell them I never stopped believing that good people find each other. Silence followed. Long, deep. The kind of silence that settles when nobody knows what to do with their emotions. Noah finally broke it. See, he said. That is why Mom showed me. Ethan rubbed his eyes and looked out the window toward the river. For years, he had worked tirelessly to move forward. He had built companies, expanded projects, filled every empty space in his schedule. Yet somehow a forgotten note hidden inside a necklace had reached him when nothing else could. Claire folded the paper carefully. I never knew this was here. Ethan nodded. I believe you. For the first time since they met, there was no suspicion in his voice. Only gratitude. Noah smiled proudly and slid the drawing across the table again. Mom wanted us to meet. Ethan looked at his son. Normally, he would have corrected him. Explained coincidence. Explained dreams. Explained reality. But today he found himself unable to do that. Because reality already felt impossible enough. As they prepared to leave, Claire placed the note back inside the locket. The silver pendant felt heavier now. Not because of its weight. Because of its meaning. When they stepped outside, the clouds had finally begun to break apart. Sunlight touched the river for the first time that morning. Noah walked between them, holding both of their hands without asking permission. Neither adult noticed at first, and when they finally did, neither one pulled away. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. What began as a strange conversation over breakfast slowly became part of everyday life. Not because anyone planned it, because Noah refused to let it become anything else. Every Saturday morning, he asked the same question. Is Claire coming? Every Sunday afternoon, he found a reason to mention her. Sometimes it was a drawing. Sometimes it was a story from school. Sometimes it was simply because he wanted to know if she had remembered to eat lunch during her shift. Ethan noticed all of it. More importantly, he noticed Claire. She never tried to impress anyone. She never treated Noah differently because of who his father was. One rainy afternoon, Ethan arrived at the hotel restaurant unexpectedly. He had finished a meeting nearby and decided to stop in for coffee. He spotted Claire immediately. Not because she stood out, because she blended in. She moved quietly between tables carrying plates and refilling drinks. Yet every customer seemed to leave her section smiling. Ethan watched from a corner booth. An elderly woman struggled to read the menu. Claire knelt beside her and patiently read every option aloud. A young father dropped his wallet while managing two energetic children. Claire noticed before anyone else and returned it with a smile. None of those actions were extraordinary. That was precisely what made them extraordinary. She treated every person as if they mattered. Hours later, after her shift ended, Ethan walked her toward the subway entrance. The city glowed beneath thousands of lights. Yellow taxis drifted through the evening traffic. Steam rose from street grates. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. Claire smiled faintly. "You usually do." He looked ahead at the crowded sidewalk. "Why are you still a waitress?" Claire laughed softly. "That sounds more insulting than you intended." "You know what I mean." She did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Claire sighed. "After nursing school, my mother became sick." Ethan listened quietly. "I spent years taking care of her." She smiled at the memory. "Then after she passed away, life moved on. Everyone else seemed to know what came next. I did not." Ethan glanced toward her. "You gave up your career." Claire shook her head. No, her voice was calm. "Certain. I chose my mother." Ethan stopped walking. The answer settled deeply inside him. Most people framed sacrifice as loss. Claire spoke about it as love. There was a difference. A very big difference. Later that night, Ethan sat alone in his study. Rain tapped gently against the windows of his penthouse. Across the room stood a photograph of Olivia holding a 3-year-old Noah. He found himself staring at it longer than usual. Then his gaze drifted to a second photograph taken years earlier. Olivia smiling beneath a summer sky. Suddenly, Ethan noticed something he had never paid attention to before. Around Olivia's neck hung a necklace. A silver necklace. Not identical to Claire's, but remarkably similar. And for the first time, a question entered his mind that he could not ignore. What if Olivia had planned something long before any of them realized it? The question refused to leave Ethan alone. For days, he found himself returning to the photograph. The necklace around Olivia's neck was not the same one Claire carried, but the resemblance was impossible to ignore. More importantly, it awakened memories he had not visited in years. Olivia had always been thoughtful in ways other people overlooked. She remembered birthdays nobody else remembered. She wrote letters people discovered months later. She left encouragement tucked inside books, drawers, and coat pockets. She believed small acts of kindness could travel farther than grand gestures. One evening, Ethan invited Claire and Noah to the Montgomery family estate in Connecticut. The invitation was simple. Dinner. Nothing more. Claire almost declined. Then Noah called personally. After that, saying no became impossible. The estate sat on rolling green hills overlooking a quiet lake. As the sun dipped below the trees, Noah led Claire through the gardens while Ethan prepared coffee on the back patio. The air smelled of pine and fresh grass. It felt a world away from Manhattan. "Mom used to sit here," Noah said, pointing toward a white wooden bench beneath a large maple tree. Claire smiled. "It is beautiful." Noah nodded. "She liked helping people." "I know." The boy stopped walking. "How?" Claire looked toward the lake. Tiny ripples danced across the water. "Because she talked about it all the time." Noah seemed satisfied with that answer. Meanwhile, inside the house, Ethan had opened a storage cabinet searching for old photo albums. What he found instead was a small cedar box. He recognized it immediately. It had belonged to Olivia. For years he had never touched it. Some memories had felt too heavy. Tonight felt different. Slowly, he lifted the lid. Inside were photographs, greeting cards, and dozens of folded notes written in Olivia's familiar handwriting. Ethan carefully sorted through them. Then something unexpected caught his attention. A sealed envelope. Across the front were 4 words. "For Noah." Later, Ethan stared at the envelope for several seconds. His hands trembled slightly. He had never seen it before. The date written in the corner showed it had been sealed only weeks before Olivia passed away. Outside, Claire and Noah returned from the garden just as Ethan stepped onto the patio, carrying the envelope. The expression on his face immediately silenced both of them. "What is it?" Claire asked softly. Ethan looked down at the handwriting, then at his son. "I think your mother left you something." Noah's eyes widened. The evening breeze moved gently through the trees. The lake reflected streaks of orange and gold from the fading sunset. Nobody spoke. Carefully, Ethan handed the envelope to Noah. The boy looked at it as though it were treasure. "Should I open it?" he whispered. Ethan swallowed hard. "I think she wanted you to." Noah nodded and slowly broke the seal. Inside rested a folded letter. But as he pulled it free, something else slipped out and landed softly on the patio table. A photograph. Claire reached for it first. The moment she saw the image, all the color drained from her face. Because standing beside Olivia in the hospital picture, smiling directly at the camera, was a younger version of Claire Bennett. For a moment, nobody moved. The photograph rested on the patio table between them like a message carried across time. Claire stared at the image with wide eyes. She had not seen it in nearly a decade. She remembered the day it was taken. Olivia had insisted on it after one particularly difficult week at the hospital. "One day we will both be glad this exists," she had said with a smile. At the time, Claire had laughed. Now, standing beneath the evening sky beside Olivia's husband and son, the memory stole her breath. Noah picked up the photograph carefully. "That is you," he said. Claire nodded slowly. "Yes." Ethan looked from the photograph to Claire. There was no longer any mystery about whether she had known Olivia. The evidence sat right in front of them. Yet somehow the truth felt even larger than he imagined. Noah unfolded the letter and began reading aloud. His young voice was soft but steady. "My sweet Noah, if you are reading this, then you are older than you are today, and that makes me smile already. There is something I hope you never forget. The world will tell you to admire powerful people, but I hope you learn to treasure kind people. They are much rarer." Ethan lowered his head. Claire felt tears gathering in her eyes. Noah continued, "One day, when I cannot walk beside you anymore, pay attention to the people who stay kind when nobody is watching. Those are the people worth keeping close." The evening breeze moved gently across the patio. The lake shimmered beneath the last light of sunset. Noah read the final paragraph. "And if life ever brings you back to someone who once helped your mother smile, trust your heart. It will recognize them before your mind does." Silence followed. Deep. Complete. Noah looked up first. "That is why I picked Claire." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Not because he believed dreams predicted the future. Not because he thought fate controlled every detail of life. But because his son had somehow seen what he himself had overlooked. From the beginning, Noah had never cared that Claire was a waitress. He had never cared about status, wealth, or appearances. He had simply recognized kindness. The same kindness Olivia had recognized years earlier. Months passed. Seasons changed. Claire remained part of their lives. Not because of a promise. Not because of a dream. Because every day she chose to show up. For Noah. For Ethan. For the people around her. 1 year later, on Noah's 9th birthday, the three of them stood together beneath the maple tree overlooking the lake. Noah smiled proudly. "I told you Mom knew." Ethan laughed. Claire laughed too. Above them, sunlight filtered through the branches. Somewhere nearby, a gentle wind stirred the leaves. And for the first time in many years, Ethan no longer felt like he was moving away from Olivia's memory. Instead, he felt like he was finally honoring it. Because sometimes the people who change our lives do not arrive with titles or wealth. Sometimes they arrive carrying a tray, wearing a simple uniform, and quietly reminding us what truly matters. And sometimes, the ones who see them first are children.